son of a bitch. If I say that, that's not polite. It's considered to be an insult. And it is almost always, you could say always, because the words in this noun phrase, if you take them separately, son of a bitch, even bitch has a technical meaning, which is a female dog, but then when we say son of a bitch, we don't interpret it as the male offspring of a female dog. We interpret it automatically and immediately as an insult. But have you ever thought, what is the process that goes into this interpretation? How is it that we have a set of words, none of which necessarily have an insulting element in them, but we use the entire phrase as an insult? If you have been following my videos, especially if you go back and watch the videos about phonology and the way language functions at different levels, we already know that language consists of minimal units of sound, which are phonemes, and minimal units of meaning, which are called morphemes. So basically, phonemes combine to form morphemes, and morphemes combine to form words. And words are combined to form phrases and sentences. But there is another level beyond that. We combine sentences to form bigger units of language, which are called discourse. So language goes all the way from phonemes to discourse. And there is actually a branch of linguistics which is dedicated entirely to the analysis of discourse, and surprise, surprise, it's called discourse analysis. Therefore, language functions at a mechanical, you could say linguistic level, starting from phonemes and going all the way up to discourse. But again, at none of these levels, the phrase son of a bitch should be interpreted as an insult unless there is something else beyond that linguistic interpretation or linguistic structure. And that's the topic of today's video, which is pragmatics. So you see, what we're doing here, there is something practical about language, which is not entirely about the mechanics inside the language. That is, in a way, part of the way we interpret and convey meaning in language. It's kind of funny because it is language that we're using to communicate, but that knowledge is not in the structure of the language. It is outside the language. In other words, it is extra linguistic, extra meaning outside. So there is this extra linguistic knowledge that we have, but it goes along with our linguistic knowledge that enables us to interpret these phrases, for example, as an insult. In a way, if you want to understand this, I can put it in these words. When we use language, we engage in two kinds of context. One is what is inside language, intralinguistic, which is called the linguistic context, or it is the discourse that we engage in. And then there's the knowledge about the world, the knowledge outside language, the extralinguistic knowledge that enables us to make use of language the way we do, and that is called the situational context. When you speak to someone, you can understand them, even if they drop verbs, if they don't mention the direct object, if they drop the pronouns, if they speak telegraphically, we still understand each other. This is possible because, not just because we know how to combine rules of grammar and discourse, but it is also about the knowledge outside language. Al and Bob are having a short conversation at that. Coming down to the pub tonight, I've got to finish a piece of work. How does this conversation make sense if we just stick to every word that is actually mentioned without referring to words that are not mentioned? Obviously, we don't think there's something wrong with this brief conversation because we understand, we infer that what Bob is saying that he has some work to do, therefore he doesn't have time to go to the pub tonight. He's not free to go to the pub. This explanation and interpretation of this short conversation is possible because of pragmatics. In other words, knowledge of the aspects of meaning that are dependent on the situational context. Here, there's something beyond these words. Traditionally, pragmatics, along with semantics and syntactics, was considered to be one of the three branches of semiotics. However, in modern linguistics, pragmatics is a term applied to the study of language from the user's point of view. Pragmatics is about the choices in language use one makes, the constraints one faces in using language in social interaction, and the effects one's use of language has on the other participants during communication. Pragmatics is an area that is somewhere in between semantics, sociolinguistics, and the context outside language. That is the extra-linguistic context. It is not always easy to draw a line between these different domains, though. We had linguistic confidence in Chomsky's model of language. Here, you can add to that pragmatic confidence. In other words, linguistic competence alone is not enough to use or understand language. You need pragmatic competence as well, because pragmatic competence is your ability to deal with formally encoded aspects of context in the structure of language in question. There are certain terms used in pragmatics. For example, there's a term called pragmatic particles, which explains the use of words such as sort of. These words are commonly used in speech and control the pragmatic nature of linguistic interaction. When you're walking on the street, you're going into the subway, and a homeless person asks you, "Do you have any spare change?" You don't interpret that as a technical question about what you actually have in your pocket. You don't interpret it as a fiduciary inquiry. You interpret it as a request for money on the part of the homeless person. And the way you understand this sentence, which is the meaning he intends to convey using that sentence, is possible because of pragmatics. You know this is a homeless person. You know about his standing in society and in the broader world. And then when he says that to you, you interpret it as a request. Such things can be explained only using pragmatics.